Hey guys, it's Tom Box here. Welcome to a new year, and with a new year that just means regionals are always around the corner to get your invite for WCQ. Whether or not you already have your WCQ invite, it's always nice to get that top cut so you can get that top cut swag so you can flex it at your locals to prove how good of a duelist you are. Weird flex, but okay. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my top tips to help you become a better regional player. This is the competitive edge that you guys might need, and whether or not you are a first-time regional player or you're a regional veteran, perhaps you just need that little extra push to get that invite or to get that top cut. These are the tips that consistently help me get my invite or top at regional events, and I want to share with you guys because they are the collective tips from multiple competitive players, and I hope that they will help you out, especially if you're new or you're always struggling at the bubble and you seem to bubble on the very last two match of your regionals. But first, I want to give a huge thanks to my Patreon out there for supporting me on this channel. Without you guys, I would have no platform to deliver a video to you guys, so huge thank you to you guys. And if you guys want to help support this channel and you believe in this channel, consider the Patreon link down in the description below and becoming a Patreon. So, anyways, let's get into this. Now, just to be clear, this isn't going to be about matchup related data. I usually cover those in a separate video whenever a deck becomes really big, and the matchup itself only covers about one of the 4 elements that contribute to your success at an event. Number 1, deck choice. My number 1 tip in this category is to be realistic with your deck expectation. Know where it stands within the meta. Are you tier 1 or are you off meta? By knowing this, it really helps you in your success. If you know that you're in the top tier stuff, you have less to worry about because you already got the most effective tactics available. So not too much to worry, and you know how to beat the circulating decks. However, if you are playing a rogue deck, and I know that not everyone's able to afford a meta deck, but you still want to play at a competitive level where you can still get your invite, that is very much possible. It's just that you have to work harder in the other categories. And the thing that you have to ask yourself is this: how do I beat the other meta decks? That's something you have to ask yourself. You need to have a clear, concise win condition against each one, and you need to know how to handle the matchup because it's different between different games, different decks. But that's what you have to ask. And if you come up with the answer where you're not able to beat them most of the time, or even if you open with a god hand, they are capable of breaking your board, beating you, even though you have some of the best opening, then that deck might not be the most optimal choice. You can go in there and have fun with it, but you shouldn't really expect to get your invite through that. But on the other hand, if your deck is capable of breaking their boards, beating their decks, taking the win quite easily, even though it is not within the meta, and you can probably sneak in 8,000 damage here and there, this is still a very good choice, and it has a good chance to still make it to the top 8. Number 2 advice within the deck choice category is that you should choose a deck that you're most comfortable with, whether it be the most represented deck or the second most represented deck. If you have a choice between those two, choose the one that you're most comfortable with because that's the deck that you're going to have more success with. Unless it's like a tier 0 versus tier 1, and the tier 0, even a sloppy tier 0 player will get some bust to play against you. Maybe you'll choose there, but in most cases, if it's not too far apart from each other, choose the one that you have more comfort with because you're going to go much further with it because you're going to minimize misplays. And that's the key thing here, minimizing misplays and being able to play at a comfortable pace. And if you can play it like second nature, you're able to play at a much higher capacity, finding more options, more outs against your opponent. And if your capacity is much higher than your opponent with the same deck, you're more likely to win. And if they're playing like the top tier deck, whatever, but they're not very good at it, you're still going to crush them because you know how to handle that matchup. And if you can handle it comfortably, you won't feel rushed or anything, and you can side deck comfortably. Everything will just fall into place much better, and you're not likely to get those slow play warnings, and you can avoid playing into time, or even if you're going to be playing into time, you can at least handle it properly so that you're not going to get cheesed by like a quick little burn. So yeah, that's my tip to you guys. And just to give you a real life example, I had a choice at the recent regional between BA, Sky Striker, and Thunder Dragon. BA, I wasn't comfortable with the deck. I love the combos. I wanted to play it, but I know that I won't do well with it because I just don't know how to see every single extension possible. So I axed that one right away. Sky Strikers, I don't like the mirror match, and that is the reason why I didn't want to do it, because I'll probably play into time, piss off my opponent, and I did not want to put them through that. And also, I was driving down there, and Sky Striker has to think through so many plays just to set up the graveyard. I didn't want to go through that. So I chose to play a shorter combo deck that was very aggressive Thunder Dragons. But I didn't like the mirror match. So what did I do? I chose to play the Dino variant because the Dino variant is able to break boards very well, has a good matchup against anything that's super defensive, and you have Ultimate Conductor Tyranno that basically outs most monsters in this current format. So that's what I chose. And well, I got my invite through it. So I guess it worked out for me. And I was super tired that entire event. Number 2, practice and meta knowledge. This is very key. If you don't practice, you're gonna suck. But there are 3 ways that you can practice, and I kind of clumped in meta knowledge in here just because they're kind of all interrelated. So, first of all, practicing platforms. You have DB, you have YGOPRO, and you have in real life. Let's talk about the worst one, YGOPRO. Why is it bad? Because it's always holding your hand. It's going to make you develop some bad habits and you're going to misplay. Even if it doesn't do it to you, it does it to a majority of players because it's holding your hand, it's forming chains for you. It's basically doing a lot of the things that required the human interaction between players. And if you take that for granted, you'd be like, oh, I'm always winning all the time. But then when it came to real life, you missed the activation of your hand traps, you missed your searches during end phases. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. But what is really good about YGOPRO is that it's very fast. You can get a lot of games in. But another bad thing about YGOPRO is that people quit all the time if they brick. So you're not really getting quality practice through YGOPRO. And hopefully you don't develop bad habits along the way through all the prompting that you get. Now the second platform is DB. DB is pretty good, Dueling Book, because you can get that interaction of, communicating with your opponent when you try to establish your own chains. You can basically play completely manually, but however, it is very slow. It is a little annoying with the interface. You can misclick and here and there, which is not likely to happen in real life. But that being said, it is still much more realistic because you can misplay, you can basically make an illegal play, and you have to catch your opponent if they soft cheat. All these things make up a more realistic experience. And of course, there's the playing in real life. That's probably the best way to practice because there's one thing that the other two can't do, which is set a timer, because you play a lot quicker in real life because you're able just to play cards and just do the actions right away. Whereas in Dueling Book, it's a lot slower, so you never really get to practice for time. But if you're going to be practicing for time, you should do that in real life. Set a 40-minute timer and play your games 1, 2, and 3. Make sure you're playing full matches because that's what the tournament is going to be like, and you should get practice as realistic to the tournament as possible. Another advantage of playing in real life and practicing in real life, if you're playing against an opponent, say you're playing against like someone that has like some sort of credentials, you know that you're getting quality opponents versus some random guy on DB that may be getting really sacky or maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. But if you're playing against someone that's really competent, you're going to get some quality practice against like those high tier opponents, and those are the ones that you really want to beat in the end. And also, another bonus is that you can discuss with your opponent of what each kind of play means. You can play with an open hand and kind of talk about what you're trying to do and what your opponent's trying to do when they open with like really awkward hand, do something that's completely unoptimal. How do you read these plays? And being able to read what your opponent is doing is what really differentiates the good players from the amazing players. Like someone that opens with like a really small board, they do one normal summon and pass, and then you're like, oh my god, he probably bricked, and you try to go off with your combo, but only to have your main resource cards completely stunned out by like a bunch of hand traps. Then you fell behind and you burn resources where they still have their card available and they still have the hand traps. And if they top deck the proper card, they have the counters and the play to push forward, which means you'll never be able to catch back up. That's a very common thing at regionals where someone, you think they bricked and then they counter you and then they just counter push all the way to the end and take the win and close out the game. That happens a lot, so yeah, that's something to be aware of. Another key thing about the meta that you should learn is you should learn how you will lose against the meta. It is important learning how to kill your opponent, but it's also important knowing how they're going to kill you. Whether it not be one of the decks or both of the decks or all the decks, you should probably learn how they're going to kill you with their combo or what's their win condition, just so that you can prevent yourself from being put into that situation and you can use the least amount of resources to prevent it. And sometimes you feel like you might still have a chance and try out some hand traps. The best way to know if a hand trap is going to work is you let them execute it and you try that hand trap. If the hand trap worked or the counter works, that's great. But if the hand trap doesn't work and you're put into a similar situation at the regional event, you know that you should just scoop it up right away, because there's no point continuing, and you need to save the time for the timer so that you can go on to the next game and maximize the amount of time that you have available. Because wasting your own time is the worst, especially in a losing situation. When you're like grinding it out against your opponent and you know that in 1 or 2 turns you're going to lose anyway, perhaps it's time to scoop early just to save some time. Because if they're a deck that is capable of attacking you directly for game, well, that's going to really suck when you realize you're the one that burned your own time because you weren't aware of the meta. So learning how to lose against your opponent is just as important of how to defeat your opponent. Number 3, siding. Siding makes up, 67% of a match, and because of that, it is one of the most important aspects of a competitive event. Make sure you practice siding. If you're one of those guys at locals that are like, oh, I won't side if you won't side, yeah, don't be one of those guys. Just build a good habit of siding so you can side very quickly, because you will burn the clock if you don't side quickly enough, and you might put yourself at a disadvantage. And that's what you don't want. Like, if you are like trying to side really quickly and you know that there's not a lot of time left, and then by the time you pass your turn to your opponent sets up their play, takes a minute, and that's all the time that was left, and they burn you along that time, well, it's GG for you. So you need to have a game plan when you side. And when you notice that your opponent is not siding as quickly as possible, say give them like a leeway of 3 minutes. 3 minutes is good enough. They should know what they should be taking out by then. Then you can probably call it just he's taking forever on the side. Just try not to be a rule shark, try not to be rude about it, but you know, time is of the essence, and there's a very limited amount of time now, and time's not very forgiving, so you can feel free to rush people. People should understand that at the events, people are going to be a bit more on edge, and they're going to be a little bit more forgiving these days. That's what I've seen lately. But yes, know what you're going to side. Know what you're going to side going first. Know what you're going to side going second. Have a game plan for every matchup. And know whether or not that matchup is more likely than not to make you go first or second. Especially when you take the win. The choice is theirs. Know what they're going to do to you. So that is basically it. And try not to trip over your own side. Especially if you're a deck that plays field spells. Evenly matched might not be an ideal card for you to play, just because if you put the field spell out, they're always going to survive with 2 cards that evenly match. It's like, try not to trip over your own sides. That's all I'm trying to get at. Number 4, play the tournament. Now remember, you're not just playing Yu-Gi-Oh, you're playing a tournament, and there are policies involved, and you want to minimize the amount of times that you're going to get penalized. So first of all, don't be tardy. Tardiness is just an uphill battle. You have to win 2 games in a row where your opponent only has to win 1. Huge advantage for him, because he can do aggressive plays that he would normally not do. And if they were a bit more conservative, perhaps you would survive a little bit longer. But if they're super aggressive, you might even die even faster. That's one thing, and that's the truth. And whenever I have 1 game up, I'm so aggressive. I throw away resources just so I can kill you a little bit faster, putting you a bit more on edge. The second thing is make sure you count your cards before you leave the table. So many instances where someone like threw a kaiju at you, you have their kaiju in your deck, or you're missing your kaiju because you forgot to retrieve it because everyone chose to play the same PC white sleeve. Yeah, and then you get a game loss in that area where you not only give yourself a game loss, you gave your previous opponent a game loss. That really sucks. No one wants that to happen. Count your cards, unside your cards, and so that you don't get penalized in that area either. Also, remember to register. It's kind of silly, but there was one regional where hundreds of players did not get to play because they registered late. They went in line, and then the event started at 11, and they basically told a bunch of guys to be like, no, you guys can join side events now because it's already too late. Lineups cut off. So don't be one of those guys that wait forever at a regional. This is specifically a regional because usually at WCQ or at YCSs, you get a bit more time like the day before to prepare, so that's okay. But regionals, you can only get that morning, so I would recommend having your deck list ready and having your cache ready just to go ahead and just submit. Remember, it kind of goes back to playing with the deck that you're most comfortable with, so you shouldn't really be making last minute changes. And if you want to evolve as you play, then talk with your opponent after you like finish your match. Be like, oh, what would you have done if I did this? Evolve as a player while you're playing the event so you can stay up to date with the most current strategy, and that's how you play the tournament. And also, don't be afraid to push your opponent to play a little bit faster if you think that they are playing a bit too slowly. It might not be intentional, it's probably not intentional, but you still have to push them because time rule is right now very unfavorable to anyone that kind of gets stuck, and you won't even get a turn. So pushing them forward is something that is to be expected among peers now. It's not something that you should be offended about. It's just, if you're playing a deck that you're not comfortable with, you're likely gonna get called out on it. That's just what I'm saying. And those are my tips for you guys to help you guys hit your next top, get your next invite for WCQ. Do you guys have anything else you want to add down in the description below? I know I didn't cover any sort of like meta decks related stuff or like any sort of details regarding specific matchups, but that's because those will change constantly and those deserve their own video regardless. But these are the mentality, these are the things that you should be practicing as a player in the game. And well, that's all I got for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit me up with a thumbs up. And if you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, hit that subscribe button, smash the notification bell, and I hope that you guys are going to be able to get your next invite, get your next top, and I'll see you guys at WCQ 2019. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please drop us a like so we know we are doing a good job, and you can also subscribe to MST.TV for more fantastic videos by clicking on the button on the left. Don't forget to check out our partners at Imperium Duelist. They make really high quality mats, including some of my own limited edition release stuff. And if you want to check out one of our past videos, click here on the right. As always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV, and I'll